On the morning of June 4, 1942, at 10:52 a.m., aboard the Japanese carrier Hiryu, 150 miles northwest of Midway, Lieutenant Mio Kobayashi felt his hand tremble as he marked impossible coordinates on his navigation chart, sensing the same creeping dread reflected in the face of Admiral Yamaguchi, who stared at newly delivered reconnaissance photos not with anger, but with the stunned recognition that something foundational in their assumptions had collapsed. The Americans had 3 carriers, not 2. The grainy photo showed an American flat-top launching aircraft, its island structure unmistakable, Yorktown, the same ship Japanese pilots had reported sunk 27 days earlier at Coral Sea. Japanese intelligence, reinforced by senior officers and confirmed by combat air crews, had removed Yorktown from all calculations for Operation MI. They believed her impossible to repair, mathematically eliminated from the battlefield. Yet here she was, alive, fully operational, and already launching the strike that would define the Pacific War. Confusion spread throughout Hiryu as sailors repeated the unthinkable. 3 carriers meant 230 American aircraft, not 150. 3 carriers meant the ambush had inverted. 3 carriers meant every Japanese mathematical certainty of victory had been destroyed. The root of the miscalculation lay in Japanese assumptions about repair. In their naval doctrine, a carrier suffering a 551 pounds bomb hole through 5 decks, ruptured fuel tanks, destroyed compartments, and mangled machinery would require 90 days minimum in a premier shipyard. Japanese planners, engineers, and strategists, products of a culture that valued meticulous craftsmanship, believed such damage required perfection, not improvisation, and thus they assumed Enterprise and Hornet were the only remaining American carriers in the Pacific. But American repair philosophy worked on different axioms. Make it function, make it fast, and make it fight. That difference began on May 8, 1942, at Coral Sea, when 18 Val dive bombers led by Lieutenant Commander Kikichi Takahashi struck Yorktown with textbook precision, dropping a 250 kilograms bomb that tore through her flight deck, exploded 5 decks down, and left her trailing a 10-meter oil slick as she appeared to limp along at a mere 6 knots. To Japanese eyes she was finished, listing, burning, dead in the water, yet below decks, Captain Elliot Buckmaster's crew began an improvised, unorthodox fight to save her. Over the next 3,300-mile journey to Pearl Harbor, the damaged carrier made 20 knots, not 6, as Chief Carpenter Boyd Mackenzie welded crude steel patches over shattered beams, sealed ruptured fuel tanks with quick-hardening cement, and used sheet metal, cannibalized parts, and jury-rigged machinery to restore systems that should have been impossible to repair at sea. Japanese intelligence intercepted reports of Yorktown's progress but interpreted the data through their own cultural lens, assuming a damaged carrier could only travel at 5 to 8 knots and thus would not reach Pearl Harbor before mid-June. They never imagined what awaited her on arrival. When Yorktown reached Pearl Harbor on May 27, she appeared crippled, smoke still rising, list visible from shore, but Admiral Chester Nimitz, standing on the oily water of Dry Dock No. 1, ordered the unimaginable, "We must have this ship back in 3 days." The deadline was dictated not by optimism but by intelligence. In a small basement within sight of the dry dock, Station HYPO had cracked Japan's JN-25 code, revealing Midway's target, strike date, and carrier disposition. The Americans knew that without Yorktown the U.S. would face odds of 4 carriers to 2, but with her, 4 to 3, still dangerous, but survivable. What followed was a 72-hour industrial miracle as 1,400 workers swarmed Yorktown before the dock had even drained, welding 20 tons of steel plate, stringing 35 miles of electrical cable, pumping 400 tons of fuel, sealing compartments, shoring bulkheads with construction lumber, and bypassing miles of ruined wiring with cables run openly across decks. They worked through rolling Oahu blackouts caused by their own welding power draw. They slept against bulkheads. They abandoned all pretense of perfection in favor of raw, functional speed. By May 30th, Yorktown sailed, still undergoing repairs as she cleared the harbor, her patched hull described by technicians as a fighter stitched together between rounds. When she rendezvoused with Enterprise and Hornet at Point Luck on June 2nd, American crews gasped, expecting a cripple but seeing a carrier launching aircraft. Meanwhile, aboard flagship Akagi, Admiral Nagumo conducted final preparations for a battle he believed overwhelmingly favorable. For elite Japanese carriers with 248 veteran aircraft against 2 American carriers with 150 planes. Every Japanese wargame, every plan, every prediction assumed only 2 American carriers, and the intelligence was considered absolute. But at 9:15 a.m. on June 4th, as Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown attacked, Japanese lookouts counted more aircraft than 2 carriers could launch, and the arithmetic began to unravel. Minutes later, the sky darkened as dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown, arriving by coincidence at the same moment, caught Japanese carriers with decks full of fueled, armed aircraft. In 6 minutes, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu were fatally hit. Hiryu struck back fiercely, focusing on Yorktown, recognizing her island silhouette with stunned disbelief, and struck her with bombs at 12:05 p.m., leaving her burning and dead in the water for the second time in 27 days. Yet even wounded, she changed the battle. Her morning strike had sunk Soryu. Her presence absorbed Hiryu's first attack, preserving Enterprise and Hornet for the counterstrike that would kill Hiryu by late afternoon. Damage control teams restored Yorktown from a burning wreck to 19 knots by 1:40 p.m., so quickly that Hiryu's second strike believed they had found a different American carrier, adding to Japanese confusion, causing Nagumo's staff to suspect 4 U.S. carriers were present. Though torpedoes from submarine I-168 would finally doom Yorktown on June 7th, her role was already decisive. She had multiplied American strength, shattered Japanese intelligence assumptions, absorbed attacks that would have crippled the remaining carriers, and helped sink one of the 4 Japanese fleet carriers lost at Midway. In the years that followed, Japanese officers confessed their shock. Commander Mitsuo Fukuda admitted that the appearance of a 3rd carrier broke every Japanese calculation. Admiral Ugaki later wrote that the Americans' ability to repair Yorktown so quickly proved the Japanese were fighting not a nation but a system, and Lieutenant Commander Taman Yamaguchi, who died aboard Hiryu, acknowledged that Japan could not defeat an enemy who could repair in 3 days what took them 3 months. Yorktown's resurrection revealed a philosophical divide. Japan prized perfection, craftsmanship, and honor in repair. America prized speed, adaptability, and function. Values reflected in everything from Liberty ships built in 4 days to mass-produced aircraft reparable with interchangeable parts. Yorktown became the living proof of American industrial democracy, where improvisation and will outweighed procedure. Her repairs rewrote U.S. naval doctrine, establishing that any ship that floats can fight, and that speed saves ships and wins battles. When Yorktown was discovered in 1998, resting upright on the seafloor with her Pearl Harbor patches still visible, she remained a steel monument to the 1,400 anonymous workers whose 72 hours changed history. Their crude welds, wooden shoring beams, and improvised patches were not miracles. They were the result of free people working together with purpose, proving that impossible was merely a challenge not yet met. Yorktown's appearance at Midway was more than a tactical surprise. It was the moment the Japanese realized they were fighting a nation whose strength lay not just in machines, but in the collective determination of its workers. Those 72 hours were America's declaration that ingenuity, adaptability, and will would define the war. Yorktown did not simply return to battle. She embodied a truth the Japanese understood too late, that the United States could do the impossible on demand, that industrial democracy would defeat military aristocracy, and that at Midway, Japan had not merely faced 3 carriers, but the full force of a nation awakened.